You have exactly 3 seconds to like and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, I'll appear in your dreams tonight. To ask for a donation for that cup of coffee, link below.
Music. Despite abundant resources and a strategically important geostrategic location, Middle Eastern countries still struggle with development instability, political unrest, protests, coups, terrorism, unemployment, and poverty prevent the utilization of natural advantages to transform these countries into prosperous nations. So what are the root causes of this instability? Music. According to National Geographic, the Middle East is a region encompassing parts of Asia, Europe, and stretching from Egypt to Iran. This region has undergone significant changes since the discovery of oil, accounting for over 40% of global production. However, instability remains constant. Since these countries have experienced approximately 50 uprisings and there is a war every 2 years, just considering Israel's war with Arab nations. Since there have been 7 large-scale conflict, terrorist groups have also contributed to the instability of this region. Therefore, what is most concerning is the fact that the ISIS terrorist organization has caused immense damage to countries in the Middle East in particular and the world in general. In short, from the 20th century to the present, along with the discovery of oil, conflict and instability have been the main characteristics dominating this region. This is a combination of many different causes. The first cause that this region has sacred sites of many major religions, including Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, with billions of followers worldwide. The hottest spot is the conflict in the holy city of Jerusalem. All 3 religions mentioned have a close connection with this ancient city. For the Jewish people, it is here that Abraham, their first ancestor, sacrificed his son Isaac to God. Thousands of years ago, according to the Bible, Jerusalem is the last place that the Prophet Muhammad visited before ascending to heaven in the 17th century. For Christians, Jerusalem, where Jesus preached, died, and was resurrected. There, throughout history, conflicts have plagued the region for thousands of years. The conflict in this land has always been ongoing. In 1000 BC, King established Jewish control over Jerusalem, the Roman Empire, and the Islamic dynasty of Caliph Umayyads in 636 AD marked the dominance of Christianity and Islam in. From then on, they alternated as the official religion of the city. During this period, the Jews were persecuted and forced to convert. Who survived fled to other areas after the defeat of the Crusades. Jerusalem officially came under Muslim control over 6. However, after the defeat in World War, with the Ottoman Empire being fragmented, the conflict shifted to between Islam and Christianity, directly between Israel and the division of Jerusalem is one of the most thorny issues in the peace process, which has stalled for decades between Israel and, according to Islamic belief, the Allah's Adarachta in this city is only while they are allowed to come and pray. Agreed to allow the DUFF, an apostolic organization, to operate in Jerusalem and ban Jews from praying there. In recent years, many Jewish groups have defied the rules and come here to hold religious activity. Palestinians consider this a provocation, leading increasingly frequent and serious clashes. Israel also built settlements in East Jerusalem, territory that the United Nations demarcated for Palestine in 1940. This has severely restricted the development of the Palestinian, and more seriously, it is causing the shape of Palestine in general, and East Jerusalem in particular, to shrink on the international map. The IJ has issued ruling that Israel's actions are violating international law. But in response, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu opposed the decision, saying that settlement on Jewish lands is legal. This has angered all Palestinians and their supporters in the Arab world. Not only between religions but also within Islam itself, where differences exist, although the two main sects of Islam, Sunni and Shia, agree on most basic beliefs and principles. Deep divisions have existed between them since about 14 centuries ago. Controversy was over who would succeed the Prophet Muhammad after his death in 632 AD, while believers thought the successor should be chosen from other elite members of the Muslim community, known as Sunnis today. A smaller group believed that only someone in Muhammad's family was worthy of succeeding him. This group is called Shia. Today, about 85% of the approximately 6 billion Muslims worldwide are Sunni, and the remaining 15% are Shia. Since the end of the 20th century, the division between the two sects has worsened. And in 1979, the Islamic Revolution in Iran created a Shia branch of Islam is in fierce conflict with Sunnis in the Arab world. Both aim to become the leader of all Islam, or at least within their own sect. Iran has used a strategy of supporting armed forces such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hajjam in Yemen, and Hamas in Palestine in response to Islam. Iran has also supported forces opposed to Iran in regional hotspots. Although Shia and Sunni have deep disagreements, they also share common interests. The relationship between Iran and Hamas is one such. Although belongs to the Shia sect, the Shia government in Iran still supports this armed group. The answer is because they share a common enemy, the backed by the United States. This has blurred the differences between the two sects. While there are instances of shared, the common characteristic of this relationship remains significant disagreement, more so than sectarian conflict. Sectarian conflict is also a breeding ground for internal discord within nations and is not difficult to overcome. To find examples, look at Lebanon. This country, composed of Sunni and Shia Muslims, Christian presence. To maintain stability, they agreed to share power, and this became an unwritten law. The Prime Minister would be Sunni, the Speaker of Parliament would be Shia, and the President would be Christian. However, Sunni Muslims felt this power split they lacked real control over power in Lebanon. And this was the seed for the emergence of Hezbollah, large group, Lebanon, thanks to support from Iran. More power than even the national army in Lebanon. Hezbollah leaders do not hide their ties to Iran, or consider Syria, where a large number of Alawites hold leadership power. Sunni Muslims constitute the majority in the country. The violent suppression of protests in 2011 sparked a civil war involving tens of thousands of Muslims. The Sunni people have joined various Islamic armed groups to fight against the Shia government of President Bashar al-Assad. A familiar tip for the instability of nations is that minorities lead the majority in a multi-ethnic community, and things are made worse when the governments of these countries are not truly effective in leading their countries. Music has long been a hypothesis that the complexity in the Middle East may be due to prolonged droughts, but that is not enough. Climate is a necessary condition, while poor management by leaders is a sufficient condition, causing instability to simmer. Due to climate change, agricultural failures, people in rural areas moving to cities, thus increasing unemployment and ultimately causing social tension. If these issues are not handled skillfully, they will escalate into. Let's take Syria as an example. The civil war in Syria was part of the Arab Spring. Studying this case can give us a clearer view of the instability in the region. According to incomplete statistics, approximately 1 million people have left their homes during droughts. The droughts and unemployment have pushed people to the brink, and uprisings were inevitable. When the first calls of al-Aba were heard, we all joined the revolution immediately, was the response of a Syrian citizen. And that marked the beginning of the Arab Spring in the country. Looking at this heat map, we can see more clearly the harshness of the Middle Eastern climate due to the high temperatures that existed before. The Middle East is particularly sensitive to the consequences of climate change. Food shortages are also believed to be a reason for the support of ISIS from rural people in Iraq. ISIS spread rumors that their poverty was due to the Syrian government deliberately delaying aid and water supplies. In desperation, they turned ISIS as a way to survive. The above examples illustrate the problem of poor management capacity within each country. In the case of Israel and Palestine, with their stronger resources, Israel has controlled the shared water resources of the Middle East, combined with the region's arid climate, exacerbate the impacts of climate change. Israel controls Palestine's water resources through the Middle Water Commission and prohibits any decisions related to water without their approval. Besides preventing sufficient clean water from reaching the Gaza, Israel also hinders any efforts to build or maintain water infrastructure by restricting imports of basic construction materials. Per capita water availability in the West Bank and Gaza is lower than recommendations, while illegal Israeli settlements use significantly more water. This farming difficult impoverishes the lives of Palestinians, deepening the conflict between them and Israel. While the story focuses on water scarcity, there are also countries in the Middle East that are rich in resources and money but still face the risks of conflict and instability. This is the story of oil. The Middle East is known as the world's oil hub, and this has had positive impacts on the region. While it contributes to the economic and social development of some Arab countries, it is also a source of conflict. You probably have long forgotten Iraq's attack, an attempt to seize its oil fields. This conflict escalated into the first Gulf, involving a US-led coalition. Tensions can be observed on the Korean Peninsula, but everything seems to remain under control, and the situation hasn't spread into a full-scale war. Why is not this the case in the Middle East? The intervention of major powers on the Korean Peninsula, situated right next to China. Buffer zone for Beijing. Beijing certainly doesn't want and cannot allow a full-scale war to occur right on.
Yes.
Especially since many of the warring parties possess nuclear weapons. That would be a nuclear war, resulting in total destruction. Furthermore, if South Korea win, this would create the United Korean Peninsula, a pro-American peninsula, sits right next to China. They don't want such a risky gamble on the other side, even though they still have a slight advantage over China. However, Washington doesn't want war to break out, forcing them to intervene to protect their partners and allies. Since the Korean War of 1953, Americans understand that they need to leave China buffer zone, so that China is no longer overly concerned about the activities of the US and South Korea, as long as it doesn't directly affect China's security. Maintaining the status quo on the Korean Peninsula will benefit the US because it ensures its full presence in the region while preventing China from being provoked, thus avoiding negative impacts on maritime relations, especially now that the economies of the two countries are closely intertwined. If war breaks out, both the US and China will suffer significant losses. In short, on the Korean Peninsula, there is someone pulling the reins of an unruly horse, preventing things from spiraling out of control and returning to the Middle East. Both China have their own involvements in this region. Previously made many efforts to democratize the Middle East by establishing pro-American governments, believing that democratic values are universal, thereby bringing stability to the region under Washington's control. However, these efforts to stabilize the Middle East using American values have failed. They have even, as some religious groups argue, that Western democratic values are eroding the Islamic values they are trying to preserve for centuries. Iran was one of the countries that reacted most strong. In 1979, the Iranian people overthrew the US-backed regime, which was plagued by corruption, political repression, and the suppression of religious values. Similar, the story of Gaddafi, who desired a united Arab Emirates, ended in tragedy, both for himself and for Libya in general. This demonstrates that for the Middle East to achieve stability, it must be stabilized according to American principles. The way for the US to achieve stability in the US-led manner is tantamount to going against the traditional Islamic values of the region. For China, the most prominent action of Beijing's intervention in the Middle East is its role as a mediator in the Arab-Iranian relations. This has contributed to an easing of tensions between the two factions. But China has not become too deeply involved in the internal affairs of the Middle East. These actions are primarily aimed at serving its own interests, building an image of a peaceful nation, and protecting Beijing's economic interests in the region. As China's oil comes from the Middle East, this also promotes investment projects within the Belt and Road Initiative. China's concerned that extremist movements in the Middle East could spread to Western China, which has always been secretly harboring concerns regarding Russia. Moscow's most notable involvement in the Middle East is in Syria, where Russia intervened militarily with declared support. The Russian government is fighting against However, don't stop there. Syria serves a foothold to help Russia maintain its influence in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, especially in the context of Russia's increasing expansion and encroachment on Russia's borders. Evidence of this is the 2017 decree by President Putin, allowing Russian troops to continue operating at an airbase in Syria for another 49 years. Thus, it can be seen that despite the involvement of the Middle East remains unstable because the ultimate goal of these great powers is to increase their influence and serve their own interests, not the interests of Muslims. Therefore, instability in the Middle East is a combination of many causes, from religion and climate change to the involvement of. But the leading and most difficult to resolve is the conflict between sects and religions in the region. However, there are still bright spots for the future of the descendants of the Prophet Muhammad. With abundant funds from oil sales, some Arab countries are increasingly applying scientific and technological advancements to combat climate change. They have also recognized the finite nature of oil and have begun using their substantial financial resources to diversify their economies. One of these diversification strategies is the emphasis on soft power, such as Qatar's participation in the 2022 World Cup, the significant investment from oil tycoons, and top football, along many other ambitious economic projects. This helps to enhance the status of Arab nations, overcome harshness of nature, and avoid the machinations of major powers. The effectiveness of these strategies remains to be seen. Political and religious disagreements between factions, such as the Sunni and Palestinian faction, or between Palestine and Israel, are truly intractable issues and cast a dark shadow over the region's future. Music.